it says that people can lick too. Hey guys, what's going on? It's your boy Saglitch, aka Sag. I gotta be honest with you. I might have played my cards out a little bit too early for this Halloween season. If you notice, if you can't read, let me help you out. If zombies start chasing us, I'm tripping you. Nothing personal. And that's a mentality that you have to have in a zombie apocalypse kind of world. It's been a little bit, I think it's been a week, maybe 2 weeks now, as of the date today, that I've shared a scary story with you guys. And I would like to continue to do it. And actually, this week, I'm going to wrap the week up with my own personal scary story. It is one I told last year, but I never put it on my channel. I want to do a good job editing. So I have 2 stories today. I have 2 stories on Wednesday. And then I have one big story on Friday. Hope you guys are going to enjoy this as much as my students have. Lord knows that they might have enjoyed the stories a little bit too much when they ask more about the stories than they do their actual lesson. Either way, I've been having a lot of fun with it. I hope you guys enjoy listening to these scary stories. If you've heard them, awesome. If you haven't, awesome. I like to put my own spin on things, so if it doesn't match up to what you've originally heard, please understand. Times have changed, things have changed, so I want to make sure that you guys get a story that you can relate to and enjoy. As always, there will be a teachable moment at the end of the story. Let's get into it. All right, so that we can get the old school campfire. Let's do the whole light up the face, make it nice and dark. Today's video will have 2 different scenarios with dogs involved. If you guys are a little bit sensitive to dogs getting mistreated, please understand this is your warning. It's nothing too bad as far as like the graphic details of that, but I do want to give you guys a heads up, and if you don't like it, I apologize. If you don't want to hear it, just skip forward or check out a different video. I will make sure to actually link the previous video right here. So let's get into the story. First up, this one's an old one, but a good one. It's called Lick. There's this girl named Jessica. Jessica came from a pretty big, pretty nice neighborhood. She came from a nice family who was well off, not so rich that she lived in a mansion, but she lived in a private gated community with a house that had multiple bedrooms. She never had to worry about debt. She never had to worry about anything that she can't afford. She was just living comfortably with her parents. Jessica's parents have been together for a very long time, and they lived in a community where they had their own private gated community. They had their own security. But as every town does, the good always came with a little bit of the bad. And the bad wasn't that close. The bad part of town was about 20 minutes down the road. And in fact, it housed one of the biggest insane asylums in the area. Jessica was sitting with her dad and her mom, and they watched a news report about the crazed serial killer who had murdered multiple people who finally got caught months down the road after he went on the murder spree. And Jessica kind of tensed up, and the dad kind of saw it, and he wanted to relax his daughter. So he kind of looks and he's like, "Hey, sweetie, don't worry. I'm sure he is going to be captured well before getting here. And in fact, I probably think that he wouldn't even come this way because he would be so out of place that he would be caught even faster." Things like this happen sometimes, but we have very well trained police officers to make sure that nothing happens to us. And in fact, we even have our own security, so you don't have to worry about that. With that, Jessica kind of eased down, relaxed, but in the back of her mind, it kind of stayed there. The following day, there was nothing on the news yet, but the dad said they probably already called him. He's processing, he's got to be caught. They have to make this official statement, and everything's good. Don't worry about it. But that night, it was a Friday night, was her parents' 15th year anniversary. And so the dad wanted to treat the mom for a nice dinner out. He didn't necessarily not want Jessica to go with him, but he wanted a nice night, a nice private night with his wife, feel a little bit nostalgic and get a little bit romantic with her. The dad left Jessica money to buy a pizza. He said, "Sweetheart, if you're feeling uncomfortable, call some friends to come over and make sure you get some pizza to relax." Jessica calls her friends up. No one's there. Everybody's out of town or has plans to do something else. But she wasn't going to let that ruin her night. She called the pizza place, got her favorite pizza, extra cheese, pepperonis, the works, and decided to enjoy the night with her dog Lucky. Lucky was a 8-year-old golden retriever. Lucky had been with her ever since she was a very, very young girl, and every single night when she went to bed, he would lay underneath the bed, and as she fell asleep, she would put her hand down, and he would crawl out, lick her hand, and then crawl back under the bed. It was getting a little bit harder in his older age for Lucky to jump into the bed with her, so he decided it's just easier just to crawl under the bed and lay there to sleep. So that night, Jessica orders a pizza. Pizza comes. She pays the delivery guy, and in fact, she's feeling pretty nice, so she tells him to keep the change, which was about a $15 tip. Jessica was in middle school, and what she did like most middle schooler does, turns on a movie and eats her dinner. Well, Lucky was nice enough to sit with her on the couch, and Jessica decided that she wanted to watch scary movies. Probably not the best idea, though, because after the movies were done, it was getting a little bit later. The sun had gone down, and it was dark outside. And she realized that she still hadn't showered. She still hasn't let Lucky out this evening. She gets up to go to the back door. Feeling a little bit uneasy because of the scary movies, she decided to be smart about it. Before she unlocked the door, before she did anything, she turned on the lights. The lights, when she hit it, illuminated the entire backyard. And the yard was fenced in all around, and the nice thing was the fence was nice and big, to where it would kind of be hard for people to jump over. The light illuminating the entire yard, she didn't see anything there. Therefore, she opened the door, let Lucky out, went to go put her dishes away. A couple minutes later, Lucky started barking. So Jessica went to the door to let him in because she didn't want Lucky to be a nuisance to the neighbors. She didn't want to be the kid with the dog that was annoying on the street. You guys know who you are. Yeah, that's right. I'm that guy on this street. Jessica did not want Lucky to get in trouble. She didn't want her parents to get in trouble, so she lets them in. Make sure she locks up all the doors, all the windows. She's still feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Lucky walks straight upstairs by her and goes underneath the bed to lay down like he normally does every night. Jessica comes up. She sits on her bed for a second, puts her hand down. Lucky just crawls out, licks her hand, and crawls back in. Well, this lets Jessica know that he's there, that at any time she felt uncomfortable, she could just put her hand down and he would go out and lick her and make sure she's okay. She decided to take a shower. She grabbed her towel and she headed towards the bathroom. A couple minutes later, she's done. She gets out. She goes to her bed, puts her hand down. Lucky crawls out like normal, gives her a lick, crawls back in, and Jessica begins to get dressed. A couple hours pass as Jessica's just watching YouTube in her bed. Hopefully she's subscribed to youtube.com/Saglage, you know what I'm saying. But yeah, Jessica decides to watch a couple of videos in her bed, and she hears the front door open. It's her parents. They walk upstairs. They knock on her door, open up. They tell her about how the night went, what all happened. And Jessica, with that said, Jessica puts her arm down. Lucky crawls out like normal, licks her hand, crawls back in, and she decides to go up to use the restroom. After she got back, she decided that she was getting tired. She made sure that everything was good to go. She puts her hand down one last time. Lucky crawls out, licks her hand, and she goes to sleep. She's awoken by thunder and decided to try the lights, and the lights are out. Therefore, she was a little bit nervous. So as always, just to make sure she's okay, she puts her hand down. Lucky comes out, licks her hand. And with that said, she gets up to go use the restroom. When she's done using the bathroom, she comes back in, sits down on her bed, puts her hand out. Lucky comes out, licks her hand, and right before she lays down, lightning flashed and the entire room illuminated, but there were shadows because the blinds were drawn. She looks up and she thought she saw something on her mirror. Her mirror is a full body mirror that leans up. She checks it every day before she goes to school. She checks it every day when she gets back home. You know, the normal routine stuff. When you guys see a mirror, you're going to check yourself out. So she looks in the mirror and sees that something's on it. And although Jessica hasn't cleaned the mirror in a very long time, she knew it wasn't that dirty when she went to bed. She puts her hand down. Lucky crawls out, licks her hand, and lightning hits again. And so she stands up, turns her flashlight on her phone, and sees that something's smudged and red all over the mirror. And she gets closer, lightning flashes again, room gets eerily quiet. She gets closer to read, closer to read. She can't quite make it out, and then lightning hits again, and she realizes it's deep red on the mirror. So she looks, and finally, with her flashlight on, gets close enough to what she can see is scribbled in really crazy looking letters. Is that sorry about that. It says that people can lick too. And she turns as lightning lights up her room one last time. There's a dog's body to the left of her. And as she looks at the mirror again, there's a person, in fact it was the crazed maniac who escaped, crawling out from her bed with his tongue out, bloodied face, with his knife ready to go. The end. What'd you think? This one comes from a very, very long time ago. Not very long time ago, but a pretty long time ago. For some of my viewers, you guys might have not even been born yet, which is kind of crazy to me if you think about it. This one comes from the very early years of the internet. This one is called Smile Dog. Premise of the story is that certain images, maybe you've come across this, maybe you haven't. Even Reddit has this huge subreddit that's called Cursed Images. And whether you believe it or not, why would you put yourself into a predicament of just looking it up? Maybe there's nothing to it, or maybe subconsciously in the back of your mind, there is. And that even though you want to tempt fate, sometimes it's best to just not even get involved. There was a guy who was off-grid. He was not a person who wanted to be part of the societal norm. He wanted to be alone. He was what we called living off the grid. He did not have any social media. He did not have any links to the community. He literally lived in a cabin in the woods by himself with his trusty dog. His dog was a husky. His dog has been with him for a very long time. In fact, the only part of communication this guy had outside of just going into town and getting supplies is his weekly phone calls with his mom. Now, his mom wanted to see him, and although she was sick and couldn't travel and he didn't have the funds to travel to see her, he did want to kind of surprise her and take a couple pictures of him and his dog. His dog was a husky. One day, the guy wanted to sit down with Griffin and he wanted to take pictures for his mom to send so that she can have a picture of him while she's at home at her desk and along the fridge or wherever she wanted to put it, to just make sure that she remembers what her son looks like. And on top of that, she gets to feel the excitement that her son has when playing with his dog. The guy sits down with Griffin. He has this old-timey camera. He, in fact, sets a timer to it. And as he goes, he sets that 15-second timer, thinking it would be good enough. And he rolled it for a couple shutters so that he can get not just one, but multiple pictures with the dog. He clicks the start button, the timer starts, he runs and sits down with his dog. He puts his arm over his dog's shoulders and told him to look at the camera. And unfortunately, the dog immediately, when he puts his arm around him, turns, and the dog loves his owner. He licks him, he barks with him, and he's just not paying attention to the camera. First time, didn't get any good pictures. The dog was constantly moving. The guy was telling him to please stop, trying to get okay. So second time around, the guy figured, let's try 45 seconds. So he sets the camera one more time, lets it on multiple rotations, and he comes back. He hits the timer starts. He runs back, sits down with the dog, puts his arm. And this time the dog's even more playful, even more excitable. And he turns, barks at the guy, makes sure that the owner understands that the dog loves him. And he wasn't doing anything bad necessarily. He just wasn't doing what the owner wanted. And so this time around, getting a little bit angry with the dog, the owner turns and decides to beat him and slap him and hit him to the point where the dog kind of yips and cowers away for a couple minutes. The owner cools off, he calms down, and this time he sets the timer for 5 minutes. And he figured he would sit down, he would talk to the dog, he would sit with him, he would make sure the dog's looking. There would be at least a couple of good pictures before the camera rolls out of film. Timer starts. The guy calls the dog to sit in his spot. Guy runs over again after a third time in a row after just beating this dog and sits down with him. And this time he puts his arm around the dog. And as he leans in to point towards the camera and try to get the dog's attention, the dog turned and the husky bit this guy in the neck, hitting the jugular, spraying blood everywhere. And as you see, the pictures start turning and clicking and clicking and clicking. And as the pictures are being taken, you see the guy just slowly grab for his neck, the dog continuously biting him on the neck, spewing out more and more blood, taking the owner to the ground and ferociously killing him. The last picture that was taken on the camera, the cursed photo that we all know and see nowadays, is the dog sitting there smiling at the camera as the guy in the background is reaching up for it. This was the story that Jonathan told his friend Stephen and told all of Stephen's friends at school. The part that Jonathan put in also is that if you go home after hearing this story and you look up the cursed image, you will start to hear howling and barking way in the distance. As the days and months and the years get closer, depending on how hungry the dog is, he gets closer and closer to where he invades your dreams, he invades your mind, and eventually he catches up to you. Stephen and his friends start laughing, carrying on, goofing off, and like, Jonathan, you're so full of it. That night, Stephen has a bunch of his friends over, and they're at his house. Stephen's little brother, Brad, and Brad's friend Johnny were spending the night at his house as well. And that night, the guys were goofing around, telling scary stories, and Stephen just so happened to share the story. Well, just like little brothers do, they wanted to be part of Stephen's group, so they come up. And Stephen was a pretty good big brother. There were times where they get along. There were times where he, kind of bully him a little bit, kind of explain to him that he's not part of the group. But this night, Stephen was feeling pretty nice, and he allowed Brad and Johnny to come up and hear the story about Smile Dog. And he tells the story just like Jonathan does, getting everybody involved. Warns them after the story to not go and look up the cursed photo, because if you do, you will hear it. And of course, just like every kid does, Brad and Johnny go downstairs, they look up the picture, and they're sitting there goofing off, and then right then and there, they heard a dog howl in the background. It's not that big of a deal, though, because there were multiple dogs in the neighborhood. So they just chalked it up as just being coincidence. They laughed it off, watched a couple of scary movies, played some video games, and finally passed out. The very next day, Johnny went home. Brad, cleaned up his room, got ready for Monday, got ready for the week, because Brad was in middle school and Stephen was in high school. So Brad and Johnny got together and they met up with Jack on Monday at middle school. Jack, unfortunately, did not make good grades over the course of the 9 weeks. He was grounded and had to stay away from them on the weekend. He couldn't do what he wanted to because he was grounded until the next report card. So Brad and Johnny tells Jack about the scary story about Smile Dog, and that night, just like they warned him not to do, Jack goes home and he sits there and he looks up the picture as well. Jack hears a faint growl in the background, but it's not a big deal. There's multiple dogs in the neighborhood, and in fact, he thinks he heard it from the living room, so he's not really worried about that. Next day, Jack goes to school. Brad and Johnny are there, and of course, Jack tells his friends who don't hang out with Brad and Johnny about the story, and they come over to Brad and Johnny so that Brad and Johnny can tell them what they heard in third person from their brother. So the story starts circulating the entire school. People will tell their friends, people tell their friends, people tell their friends, to the point where Brad and Johnny started to become more and more popular telling the story. And this time, every time they tell it, they warn the kids not to go home. But of course, that adds to the flair of everything. Eventually, hours becomes days, days become weeks, weeks becomes months, and everybody in the entire school has heard the story of Smile Dog. Everybody sits there and claims. Every night they hear it, they laugh about it, they goof off, and they joke and tease one another that they don't really hear it or it's coming for them. As the days turned into weeks, that turned into months, you could see that something was going on with Brad and Johnny. They would start to come to school, their hair a little bit more unkempt, they weren't showering as much, they started getting bags under their eyes. In fact, they started to seem like they weren't getting any sleep at all. Every time they would go to class, the first period they'd fall asleep, to the point where the principal had to get involved and send an officer out for wellness checks for the family. Johnny started noticing them, and although they were talking every now and then, Brad and Johnny weren't talking as much as what they normally do. But one day, on a Friday, Brad and Johnny just never showed up to school. Jack kind of felt this weird because they come every single day. There's no reason why, but maybe their family had something going on, and maybe they wanted to get a head start on a 3-day weekend, so he didn't think anything too much of it. He did, however, when he got home, called, texted them, Snapchat them, Instagram, DM'd them, and just to try to see what's going on with them. Trying to see if they wanted to hang out, trying to see if there was something that they could do all together. Tuesday rolls around, no text, no call, No reply at all. And so Jack comes to school, and the principal pulls him into the office and says, "Hey, Jack, how's it going? Have you heard from Brad or Johnny lately? Because we haven't heard from them since last Wednesday, and even then, they weren't looking too well. Do you know what's going on with them? Can you share anything at all?" Jack just kind of sits there and says, "Well, nothing I can think of. I mean, last time I heard from them was last week. I think they're busy with family. Maybe they went on vacation or something." The principal kind of sits there and he goes, "Well, just in case, I'm going to send someone over to check on. We're going to have a wellness check on them. It's like, I just wanted to see if you heard from them. Maybe I can reach out to the parents. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe when the officers knock on the door, they can explain what's going on." He's like, "I tell you what, if you hear from them, can you please come back to me in the morning and see if you can give me any updates, and I'll give you the same." That night, Jack goes home just like a good friend would. He called, texted. He has so much going on that he was just going to walk over to his friend's house. But unfortunately, because there was so much homework and he didn't want to fall behind in his classes again, that Jack decided that he was going to do the homework. He would just probably see his friend Samar, hear from the principal what's going on. The very next day, Jack goes to his first class. Brad and Johnny still not there. Heard nothing, went to lunch, and he gets called into the principal's office again. As Jack comes in with a smile on his face, he closes the door, and the principal asks him to sit down with a very solemn look on his face. He's like, "Jack, I need to tell you something. I sent an officer out to check on Johnny and Brad, on their family and their house. And unfortunately, when the officer came back, he found that Brad and Johnny's family had been attacked. And that both of the boys are in the hospital right now, but the rest of their family has been basically slaughtered, for a better word of it." He said, "I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell your family what to do, but being such good friends that you guys are, can you please, for moral support, go see them? Maybe they might not hear you right away. They might be awake, and it would be really awesome if they could see a friendly face," basically. Jack goes home. That afternoon, he forgets everything that went. Basically, the rest of the day was a haze. He goes home and he pleads and begs his parents to go see his friends that somehow their whole entire family were brutally attacked. Parents reluctantly said yes. They drive Jack to the hospital. As his parents sit back, Jack goes in to see his friends. The issue was that the friends in the hospital were on ventilators and basically were having air pumped through them and making their chest go up and down to keep their heartbeat going until something could happen or the doctors could operate on them to make them feel better. The parents didn't seem fit to go in to the boys' room with Jack. They decided to say, "Hey, as long as it's nothing too gruesome to the doctor, he can go back by himself." The doctor says, "We have everything patched up, even though the kids look rough. There's nothing to be scared of. I think he'll be able to handle it." So Jack walks into the room and he sees the principal in there as well. Principal greets him, says, "Hey, I don't have any more details than what I gave you already. I felt that it would be good for them to maybe not see you since they can't really open their eyes or they're technically in a medically induced coma. Studies have shown that you can hear during it, and maybe the boys, as bad of a news, as bad as a week that they had, maybe your voice, a friendly voice, might be just the thing they need to hear and help come through with it." As Jack looks at his friends, he comes more into the room. Door closes. It's an automatic door behind him. And as he steps closer, the principal gets closer to him and quietly just says, "But before you go and say anything, I know what you've been doing at the school. I know the story you've been spreading. This is not a story that's new to me. This is a story that I heard growing up. But I need you to understand, you don't need to get anything involved. You don't need to get anyone else more involved. And in fact, why would you go and look at the cursed image or tell kids not to look at the cursed image, to basically dare them to do something, put themselves in harm's way? When I was a kid, we know about the cursed image, and someone always had a photo somewhere in a book somewhere. I was lucky enough to where I never looked it up. We had very similar situations happen when I was a kid, but we chalked them up to just eerie coincidence. So when you get back to school, we need to kill this story and we need to keep it dead. Do you understand me? And right then and there, as Jack looked up at his principals, he heard a beep behind him. And one of the machines on Brad or Johnny were going off. And so as he turned and looked to see, he took a step forward past the principal to see what was going on. And then he turned and looked and said, "Hey, get help." But there was no one there. That was weird. Maybe the principal already left to go run to get a doctor and get a nurse. So basically, Jack was sat there looking at the machine, seeing what was going on. He had no idea how these machines worked, so there was really nothing he could do. So he turns and runs, and it was taking the doctors and nurses forever. So he looks out, he opens the door up, and there's no one in the hallway. But he pops his head out and says, "Nurse, doctor, someone, please help! Please help my friends!" He turns back in and goes in, and you figure, hey, someone's hurt him, so he's got to help out. A couple minutes go by, and he's still no one. So he throws open. He says, "Guys, please, someone, come help! Come help me!" And then there, Jack heard no one. He didn't see anybody. He saw the monitors on the door. He heard the machine behind him going off. Nothing. He figured he can't wait, and he can't just let his friends die. What if they're in dire need of some help? So he starts walking to the bed. As he gets closer, he checks back behind him. Checks behind him. He's looking for his principal, the parents, the doctors, the nurses. No one's there. So he goes closer. As he's getting closer, he turns around. Still nothing. No one's outside. In fact, the lights feel like they've almost gone out because they're censored motion lights, and there's no one that have been there, so they're starting to go out. He turns around. He gets to the bed and starts pressing the button to call the doctor, to anybody to help. Turns around. No one's there. He gets out his phone. He starts dialing 911, and no one answers. He turns around to the bed. He keeps clicking the button. He turns around. He goes to the door. He yells, "Nurse, doctor, help!" Runs back to the machine. In this case, he turns and he sees the machine down and the mask off, and Brad's whispering something. He's not awake. His eyes are closed, but he's whispering something. And so Jack's like, "Hey, Brad, what are you saying? Can you speak louder? I need to know what you're going on. You need to put your mask back on." Brad's just sitting there, closed eyes. Jack gets up, goes closer. "What's going on? Brad, tell me, please. Tell me something." As he comes closer, he's still just whispering, can't hear him. And Jack figures he can't talk any louder. He's been in a medically induced coma. Turns around, no one's coming. Still nothing. Still no change behind him. He comes closer. He can hear it, but all he hears is the lips making the noise that it makes when they come together when you talk. He looks at Bryce. "You gotta tell me, man. What can I do to help? I'm worried here. I'm worried. What's going on?" And so Brad just continues to have his eyes closed, and he keeps saying the same thing over and over. And basically, at this time, to hear what he has to say, Jack gets really close up. To hear what he has to say, Jack gets really close up, basically to the point where he's touching the side of his face, his ears pressed right up against his mouth. He's sitting there, and then Brad's still sitting there. Jack leans his head a little bit closer. He's starting to hear something a little bit that he keeps repeating. He's starting to pick up on a word, but he just can't quite hear it. So he leans in any closer. Ah! Boom! Right then and there, the doctor comes in, the nurse comes in, and moves Jack out of the way, gets Brad back underneath the incubation system, and makes sure that he's okay. With that said, Jack gets out, terrified of what's going on. He doesn't know what just happened to him. He does know what he saw as he was pushed out of the way. Underneath the gown of Brad were these claw marks, 4 scraped down, and big teeth marks, as if he's been bit and scratched by something. He runs out of the room, terrified, going to his parents, telling them what he saw, and the parents told him to calm down, that he was just scared. And he begged them to take him home that night. That night, when he gets home, crying because his best friend's what he saw, crying because of what he experienced at the hospital, he hears something outside his door, growling, barking, howling. And Jack goes and he's finally had enough. And he goes to the front door, swings it wide open, nothing's there. This kind of plays with Jack's mind. Is he hearing things? Is it the dog next door? Is it his dog? What's going on? At night he has a dream, and all he hears in the dream is barking and growling, and what he experiences is a German Shepherd chasing him, growling, having teeth the size of a shark. Just a massive mouth coming at him closer and closer, to the point where he wakes up every couple of minutes, frightened, terrified. And the next day, he goes to school. He has no sleep, bags under his eyes. Every single second someone says his name, or every single second he's asked to answer something, he jumps to where he was asked to go see the nurse. And the entire time he was at the nurse, He slept the entire time because he had no sleep the night before. Parents pick him up, tell him that they're going to go see a doctor the next day. He needs to just sleep it off. The doctor's been busy the entire night, and that he needs to speak to someone, both medically and professionally, to make sure that he's okay. That night, again, hearing the claws, the scratches, the barks, the growls, the howls. This time, it's closer. In fact, it's right outside his bedroom door this time. He goes up and he says, "I'm sick of it." Swings the door wide open. Nothing. "Jack, come on, man, get it together. You looked at that stupid story. It's gotten in your head. Your friends are hurt. You're worried. I gotta go to sleep. I gotta calm down, but I need to talk to at least someone right now." So he goes in his bedroom, his parents' bedroom. He swings the door open there. He's like, "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you." So he walks over, and his parents are already in the bed, asleep underneath the covers. As he pushes on his dad, feels the sticky, slimy stuff all over him. He looks down, and it's blood red. He uncovers both the mom and dad, and they're in the bed, clawed, scratched, and mangled to death. As he grabs his cell phone, he's running down the staircase. He's going to go next door and call the police and have someone come out to help him as fast as they can. As he opens the door, ha! Oak's waiting for him, teeth perched, smiling, looking at his new dinner. The end. Now, this one wasn't as scary as the previous ones with the jump scares. And in fact, it's made to build up for a jump scare in the middle to calm, or to kind of heighten your senses, and then calm down, and then build it back up for another jump scare. Like I said, these stories, they've been modified a little bit, and everybody's going to put their own little twist on it. And maybe you weren't scared. Maybe it's a little bit different seeing this in the video. Write it down real quick. And this one actually has a visual for the story. So if you want, I'm going to count down on 3 and put up the cursed image that supposedly goes with Smile Dog. 3, 2, 1. Alright guys, if you didn't look when the picture was up, I understand. Some people ask me if it's real. Some people ask if it's made up. I'm going to let you decide. I don't know if the story's real or not. All I can do is pass on the legend of Smile Dog, bring you guys some entertainment. Have a very spooky night. Have a spooky Halloween. Have a great week, great day, great month, a great year. I'll catch you guys on the next episode. And remember guys, just because I'm still here doesn't mean it's not true. Ha!